What is going on, guys? The Inside the Blue podcast, and today we have our mid-season review. Teams that I think are going to make the playoffs, teams that had an absolute disaster of a season, and teams, that could win the Super Bowl. And of course, obviously, all the way at the bottom, teams that are ready for the draft and ready to click the button to sim to the NFL draft. But of course, these are all the teams that we are reviewing, every team in the NFL. I kind of scattered them around instead of going from Arizona to the final team. So we're starting off with the Saints. If there's something that we learned about the Saints, it was the most fraudulent 2-0 start of their fraudulent team of basically it all. Right? They started 2-0. I thought at first, I'll admit I did say it, I thought they could maybe be a tough dog in the NFC South, and quickly I learned that they're not. And in fact, they are terrible. They fired Dennis Allen. They're in a spot where it's just, click me, I'm ready for the NFL draft. The Saints are going to be a top 10 pick with these. They're 2-7. They have a tough opponent with Atlanta this week, and I don't expect them to win. Don't forget to check out our weekly picks episode. It's every week. We are so good this year at picking NFL teams. But getting into another team, it's the Miami Dolphins. And if there's something that I always have a concern with, it's Tua's health. He continues to come back. For me, I would tell him to retire. That team, they don't have bad pieces, right? They have Tyreek Hill, they have Jalen Waddle, who's that's a good wide receiver punch duo. They have Devon Achane, who's very good, but overall, they had a disaster. They've had a disaster of a season. Things have just gone really, really low for them, and unfortunately, I think that keeping Tua is not the greatest idea. I wouldn't honestly hate if they drafted a QB, whether it's later in the draft. But overall, just not a good year for them. And it's unfortunate because I think Miami's kind of that team. Like, if they honestly just had Tua the entire year and he played like Tua, they could easily maybe try and catch the Bills and have a good race for the division. But this year, it's all Buffalo. It's all Buffalo. For that division. And the Jets, I had pretty high expectations, and I decided to take them to win their division, and clearly I was wrong. Getting into our next team, the Baltimore Ravens, and I think we kind of all know where I'm putting the Baltimore Ravens. They're a Super Bowl contender, man. This team with Derrick Henry specifically, it's changed their run game. It's changed how they can use Lamar Jackson. It's changed just how they run as an overall team, right? The only thing is we all know when Derrick Henry's not in the backfield, we know it's a pass play, but then, their offensive coordinator could just say, all right, we're going to do a QB run or QB run play with Lamar and completely fool the defense. They can make this team super good. Do they have the greatest trade deadline? No. And I think just for the defenses, that's maybe their issue if they want to try and beat the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, or other teams in the AFC if they want to go to the Super Bowl. That's my only concern is kind of their defense. And getting into our next team, the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think if there's one thing that Bengals fans know is that they have to almost kind of win out. They're 4-5. They have the potential to go 4-6 as they're taking on the Baltimore Ravens. And Joe Burrow kind of said it. If they get 9 to 10 wins, they're probably a lock for the playoffs. And I think that is definitely a case because there are a lot of bad NFL teams this year. So I'm going to put them for potential playoffs. I think they could be a potential playoff team. I don't think they're in that disaster type season. Now they're 4-5. They could win a few games. Joe Burrow can get really hot, and Jamar Chase can go off. And if there's another team that has shocked a lot of people, it's Bo Nix. And this Broncos team, as we get into the Broncos, this is a potential playoff team, I think. Now, I know it's kind of hard when you have potential playoffs and then disaster year. Potential playoffs is also kind of like it's in the hunt, I think. Like, they're kind of in the hunt. They could be a potential playoff team. And I think that's kind of what the in the hunt is described as, is that's a team that's trying to fight for the playoffs. It's not like they're in the disaster year. It's not like they're a really bad football team. They could be a potential playoff team. And I think it could have a lot of teams in there. Honestly, I think it could definitely have a lot of teams in potential playoffs. Getting into our next team, it's the New York Giants. It's my favorite NFL team. It's been an unfortunate ride. The Daniel Jones experiment needs to end this year. And, of course, there's a lot of questions with Brian Daboll, Joe Shane. Now, I don't think they're going to get the number one pick. And I don't think this roster is awful. I think they have some really fun pieces on the defensive side with Drew Phillips, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns. Tyler Newbin's been cool as a rookie. But then on the offensive side, like, they have Malik Neighbors. They get him the ball, but it's like, Daniel Jones missing his receivers. Daniel Jones this, Daniel Jones that. It's a lot of blame towards Daniel Jones overall. Now, I would put them as number one pick contention, but I think they're a better team than the Saints this year. Getting into our next team, Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings have been a fun team for to watch. I mean, they had those two skids against the Rams and Lions, but the Lions are the best team in the NFC. I'll tell you that right now. The Lions are the best team in the NFC, and I really like what they're doing, and I think that overall, the Vikings could definitely be a playoff team, and they could really swing some heads around with that defense led by Brian Flores, of course, Jay Jettas. Sam Darnold looks like he's had a home, so it's like, with how Sam Darnold is playing, what do you do with J.J. McCarthy, who you just drafted? It's definitely going to be an interesting situation when J.J., of course, recovers from his meniscus injury. So either way, really, really happy to be a Vikings fan, if you are. Getting into our next teams, LA Rams. They're a potential playoff team in my book. I think you could definitely argue that they could be a playoff team, but it's just going to matter of what they do in these next 3 to 4 games, right? And I know the NFC West is kind of up for grabs. The San Francisco 49ers off to a slow start. They might be getting McCaffrey back. They've had some injuries with Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk tears his ACL. Just a lot of unfortunate bounces and unfortunate scenarios for the 49ers. I still think the 49ers are going to win the division, and I think the Rams are a team that could be right behind them. I think the Rams are better than the Seahawks, and I think the Rams are better than the Cardinals. Now, getting into Baker Mayfield and their team, it's another team that's in the hunt. And honestly, I think I might just I'm considering just renaming this in the hunt. The longer I get into this episode, and I think let's just honestly do that now, because I think it would make more sense. Because in the hunt / potential playoff team, I think is the right word. I think it's easier. And just getting into our next team, it's the Detroit Lions. I think there's enough said. I think I have talked enough with the Detroit Lions between all my episodes, besides talking about the Giants primarily. The Lions have everything that you need to be a Super Bowl team. They have a quarterback that can move the football downfield, read a defense, I guess somewhat be a game manager, but in a good way. Make the throws that you can. You have an elite offensive line. You have a very good wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have the best running back duo in the NFL with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. You have an elite defense. What is there that is stopping the Lions in the NFC, really? Is it the Philadelphia Eagles? Because to me, that seems like the team that can maybe stop the Lions, because I don't know if San Fran has it this year. Maybe the Vikings give them a run, but overall, I think they're one of the top favorites. Getting into the Bears, it's kind of just a team that is in the hunt too. I think overall, I like them as a team. I think they can make some noise. I think Caleb Williams is having a good rookie year. I think, of course, he's got a lot of room to grow. He's got a good. I think he's got a good overall situation with that. Getting into our next team, it's the 49ers, and I'm going to put them at playoff team just because I think they're going to make the playoffs. I know it hasn't looked perfect, and there's been a lot of issues, but I think just the fact that I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think you could definitely make a case that they could be right here, 1,000%. But we're going to put them as a playoff team because I think overall, down the stretch, they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they're a good enough team to be a playoff team. Getting into our next team, the Philadelphia Eagles, of course, very good team. Is Nick Sirianni the best coach for them? Probably not. A lot of Eagles fans think he's too aggressive on fourth downs and all of that, but they're still a Super Bowl contending team. I'll tell you that right now. The Philadelphia Eagles are back to that bad, vicious team that just goes into your building and kills you. Or at their stadium, they'll beat you up. Now, they didn't really beat up the Jags. Sometimes they really let their fish on the hook too long in games. And I think just for the overall vibes of Philadelphia, I think you're pretty good despite the whole Nick Sirianni thing. Saquon Barkley has been an unbelievable addition. It was the perfect situation for him. He gets a really good offensive line. He gets a really, good team overall that he could build off of. But getting into our next team, another team that is just really bad. It's the Las Vegas Raiders. This team is very bad, up and down. Their quarterback situation is terrible. I fully expect them to have a really good pick and a really good chance at maybe a Shadir Sanders, maybe a Cam Ward, and I think they're probably going to get one of those type of QBs. Overall, I don't really know the future with the Raiders, man. I feel like maybe Max Crosby in the future is a trade candidate. I'll tell you that right now. I don't expect him to play his full career in Las Vegas if he has eyes on a Super Bowl. But getting into our next chunk of teams, the Green Bay Packers. For me, I'll say this about the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love just needs to stop throwing interceptions, man. Jordan Love needs to stop turning over the football. If they want to go far in the playoffs, I think they got a fun team, though. I think the NFC North altogether is a really fun division. You got 4 teams that are trying to battle it out every single week in terms of making the playoffs. Getting into the Washington Commanders. And man, oh man, I'm going to say it. This is a Super Bowl contending team. I'm going to say it right now. I really like what Washington's doing. I think Jaden Daniels is a great QB. I definitely can make a conversation that he's an elite and MVP type candidate. And I'm not trying to glaze the first-year rookie out of LSU. This guy is legit. Okay, he uses his legs. He doesn't turn over the football. Cliff Kingsbury's done a really good job. And Washington has a team now. They just traded for Marshawn Lattimore. A great trade. I know people have said it's like a B-plus type trade. I think it's a really good trade. I think it might be an A-type trade. And it's a very good deal for them. I'm unfortunately jealous of what has gone on in Washington, as I am a Giants fan. And you see them grab a QB, and it just turns the franchise around. And you put the right pieces together. It's a really good mix. Cardinals. Another team that's just in the hunt, man. Another team that's just in the hunt. They're fighting in the NFC West. Do they have a chance to make the playoffs? I think they do, but they got to win the games that they got to win, and especially in their division. Pittsburgh Steelers, playoff lock. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contending type team, But I think they're definitely a team that's just going to make the playoffs. Might be a first-round exit, might be a second-round exit. Depends who they play. And I feel like that's kind of the vibes for Pittsburgh every year. They make the playoffs, and they kind of just get bounced in the first round. Another Super Bowl contending team, that's the Buffalo Bills. I mean, this team is something special, man. This team is something special under Josh Allen. They have the chance to go 8-2 as they take on the Colts this weekend. Really fun stuff. Really fun stuff out of them. I'm really excited to see what the Buffalo Bills do this year. Can they take down the Chiefs this year in the playoffs? We will find out. If there's another team that I think is fully expected to make the playoffs, that's the Atlanta Falcons. I have them as a division winner. I think they're going to win the NFC South. The Panthers are a crap show. The Saints are a crap show. The Bucs are kind of in the hunt. Maybe they win a few games. Maybe they sneak in. But overall, Kirk Cousins in his first year is going to get back in those playoffs, baby. Getting into our next game, the Seattle Seahawks. It pains me to say this. I would put them in disaster year, but I'm not. I don't think it's been that bad. I think it's just been a few bad losses. Like the loss to the Giants was really bad. They've lost a few just bad games overall. So I think they're just another team in the hunt, which is potential playoffs, but also it's like, I don't know. Getting into our next slate of teams, New England Patriots, of course, fired Bill Belichick. They parted ways, bring in Jared Mayo, and things weren't going to go perfect right away. Like, they weren't going to add Drake May, and then they were just going to become a very good football team. But I still think I like the future with the New England Patriots. I have them being in the number one pick contention. Getting into another team, and I think this has been a disaster year, but I'm going to put them as really bad. That is the Cleveland Browns. I think disaster year is kind of more teams like that have good expectations, as we'll get into some of the teams that are going to be in there shortly. They're kind of just teams that are, they have those playoff type expectations and they just fail. But getting into our next team, the Houston Texans, I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but I think they're a very strong team. I think C.J. Stroud's got that team going. Unfortunately, Stephon Diggs gets injured, and that's a huge blow, but they're getting Nico Collins back after having 4 weeks on the IR with the hamstring injury. Getting into our next team, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think it's really going to be Lions against Chiefs this year. Two of the best teams going at it. Not many flaws. Of course, Patrick Mahomes hasn't even played his best football. He's turning the ball over, but he's still managing to win games. He just managed to win a big game against the Buccaneers. The Cowboys are a disaster. This year. Jerry Jones making a terrible deal for Jonathan Mingo. I don't know how the Carolina Panthers got a fourth-round pick for a guy who has 500 career receiving yards. That's not a blow on Jonathan Mingo. It's just another poorly managed trade by Jerry Jones. Getting into our final few teams, the Chargers. I think they're a playoff lock. I think they're definitely going to sneak into the playoffs. They've had a good year with Justin Herbert, a good year with Jim Harbaugh, who's back in the playoffs, and I fully expect the Chargers to try and do something in the playoffs. Getting into our next team, it's the Jets. Would I say it's a disaster year? No. I think it's just another team in the hunt. I think they're trying to make the playoffs. They got to win this week against the Arizona Cardinals, who are also trying to fight to get into the playoffs. This team should not be this bad on paper. They just need a coach that knows how to run an offense and knows how to, fit an offense in with Aaron Rodgers. But right now, the Jets are kind of just a team in the hunt. Panthers, nothing much said. That team is awful. They're taking on the Giants in Germany this week, which is probably one of the worst games I've ever seen on a schedule. It's going to be terrible. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be terrible. And for me, I don't know if I want to wake up at 9 in the morning to watch my team play the Carolina Panthers. And honestly, don't expect much from either team. Getting into another team that is just really bad, it's the Tennessee Titans. Really bad football team. Will Levis might not be the future. He might be the future. I'm not really sure. Overall, just not a great squad up and down. They trade DeAndre Hopkins away, and it's just another player that leaves the Tennessee Titans and already has an impact. We saw it with A.J. Brown, and now we see it with DeAndre Hopkins. Getting into our final two teams, the Colts and the Jaguars. I think the Colts are kind of just a team that is just in the hunt. Maybe a potential playoff team, maybe not. Just another team that is just really bad. But I think Anthony Richardson's done in Indianapolis. I'll tell you that right now. Hasn't had the expectations, hasn't met the expectations. He's had issues with everything, whether it's shoulder injuries or just, I guess, maybe lack of motivation to play for the Colts. I'm not sure. But to wrap it up, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, I'm going to put them as really bad. I'm thinking about disaster year, but it's like they're just a really bad football team. And maybe that's because Doug Peterson's their head coach. Maybe it's because Trevor Lawrence isn't that elite QB. He's good, but he's not an elite QB. I think Brian Thomas Jr. Oh my gosh, my bad. Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's a good wide receiver. Could build around him. They have some pieces like Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby. Wide receiver overall still a question mark in my opinion. I think they're just a really bad football team. I didn't know the expectations for them. That's why I don't have them in disaster year. I think you could definitely make a case. They're a disaster type team, but overall just not meeting the vibes. But of course, thank you guys all for watching. Another video, another tier list. Definitely going to bring a lot more tier lists to you guys. I love making them for you guys. And overall, you see my thoughts, not just on the New York Giants, who we primarily focus on. It's the Inside the Boot podcast. We should be really just focusing on all the teams. But for me, I just love talking New York sports a lot. That's why I mainly do them. But anyways, guys, that's enough from me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.